Story time!
Warning: contains somewhat mature content, including language, brief violence, and mild sexual themes, and may not be suitable for people under age 14.
The Black Warrior. Read to you and written by Kara Reynolds. It was a dark night, though the moon shone bright and the stars shimmered like little silver fires in the sky. A young man, tall and handsome, about the age of 19, strode through the streets of a small town in Japan on his way home. He had shoulder-length black hair and almond-shaped brown eyes. He was well-built, having a few muscles showing here and there. He was only half a mile from his home when he paused. The man looked into the alley he was standing near, thinking he had heard a noise. He slowly looked away and started to walk home again. He barely took one step before he was grabbed by someone and thrown into the alley. The man landed on the filthy ground and was immediately attacked by a series of fists from at least 10 other men who were strong and muscular. The man screamed as he was attacked, feeling white-hot pain everywhere on his body. He felt hot liquid ooze out of various parts of his body, and he was sure it was blood. Suddenly the attack ceased, and the group of men hurried out of the alley. The bleeding man opened his eyes, vision blurry. He felt dizzy and everything around him swirled, making him feel sick. He saw things start to fade to black and knew he must be dying. Suddenly, a bright crimson light flashed from the dirt floor of the alley. The man slowly strained to see what it was. He rolled onto his stomach with difficulty. There was a huge red circle on the ground, revealing a dark hole that looked very deep. The entire thing was glowing. Then a massive figure rose from it, and the man's eyes widened in shock. The thing looked like some kind of monster. It was so big it barely fit the width of the alley. Its skin looked reptilian, but was a mixture of black and scarlet. It had huge horns, making it look like a devil, and 4 glowing orange eyes. The monster was holding a huge staff in its clawed hand. The man gaped.
Said the man hoarsely. Are you the devil? Have you come to take me to hell?
The monster laughed a low, booming laugh.
In a manner of speaking, yes,
it said.
I am the Emperor of the Underworld. My name is Dracus. I have come to make a proposition with you.
The man blinked.
I'm listening,
he muttered weakly, vision swimming again. Dracus smiled.
I will spare your life and give you some of my own demonic power. But you have to come to the Underworld and work for me. You will be part of my army.
The man swayed but smiled.
I accept.
He collapsed onto the ground as Dracus laughed evilly, reaching his gigantic hand towards the dying man. It was a sunny day in Tokyo, Japan. A girl with black hair tied up in pigtails and brown eyes walked from the train station with a rolling suitcase. She wore a black and red dress with crosses around the skirt, and thigh-high buckled boots. Her name was Cho. People stared at her as she made her way to her new home. Cho unlocked her door with a key and went inside. The house was completely empty for now. She went to a bedroom and began unpacking her clothes. She took out a decorative katana and hung it on the wall. Once she was done unpacking all of her possessions, she sat on her bed and sighed sadly, looking around. "Home sweet home," she muttered. There was a knock at the door, and Cho stood up to answer it. When she opened the door, there stood a girl with short, bleached hair that looked orange and dark blue eyes. She wore a tight cameo tank top and baggy black pants. Cho blinked at her.
"Hey there! You must be my new neighbor,"
said the girl. Cho nodded. The girl bowed.
"May I come in?"
Be my guest," said Cho, unsure. The girl walked inside the house.
"So, what's your name, neighbor?" she asked.
"Cho," replied Cho. The girl smiled.
"My name's Tomoko. This place is empty!"
Tomoko exclaimed. Cho smiled faintly. "I just got here. I haven't bought any furniture yet." Tomoko smirked.
"Ah, I see. That'll be fun, won't it?"
She walked further into the house and Cho followed.
"So, what brings you to Tokyo?"
Tomoko asked. Cho bit her lip. "I got a bit tired of home," she replied. Tomoko raised her eyebrows.
"Somehow I feel you aren't telling the whole story."
Cho shrugged, not replying. Tomoko sighed.
"Welp, if you need anything, don't hesitate to come over and ask me. See ya!"
She smiled and bowed, and then left Cho's house. Cho furrowed her brow and was about to go into her room when Tomoko came back.
Oh, Cho, I forgot to warn you. Don't go outside when you hear a siren, okay?
Cho turned around. A siren? Tomoko nodded.
Yeah, every so often a siren will sound. You're safe inside a building or house as long as there's a little red X on each entrance, she explained.
Cho tilted her head. Okay. Tomoko waved and bounded happily out of the house again. Cho stood there for a while, then went to her front door and looked on the outside of it. There was no red X to be seen. She looked at the other houses on the street and saw red X's on each of their doors. Cho furrowed her brow and went back inside. She went to her room and lay on the bed. She wondered to herself why there was no X on her door, and where she could get one. Is it just paint? She asked herself. She got up, grabbed her purse, and hurried out of the house. Cho walked along the streets until she found an art shop. She went in, greeted by a small bell above the door. She looked down the aisles and found a jar of red paint and a paintbrush. Cho purchased the 2 items and then hurried back home. Once at her door, Cho unscrewed the lid of the paint jar and dipped the paintbrush inside. She painted a medium-sized X on the door. Feeling relieved, she went back inside and set the paintbrush in the sink. Cho went into her room again and picked up a little rag doll that her mother had made her when she was little. She stared at it for a long time, wondering why she was warned about a siren and what would happen when the siren went off. Cho took the little doll's arms and made the doll clap a few times, then gently set it by her pillow. She looked outside her window and saw it was nearly sunset. She was hungry but hadn't gone out to buy any food. Cho decided she would just go to bed since she had nothing to do, and she was tired anyway. Cho slid under her covers and closed her eyes, trying to fall asleep. It took a little while, but she finally managed it. The next morning, Cho was woken up by Tomoko.
Rise and shine, Cho! Get up!
She said, bouncing on Cho's bed. Cho opened her eyes and blinked at Tomoko. What are you doing here? She asked sleepily. Tomoko giggled.
We're gonna go shopping for furniture and stuff today, she replied.
Cho blinked. You're going to come with me? Tomoko nodded.
It'll be fun! That way we can spend more time together and become great friends. That's the most important thing in life, you know.
Cho stared at Tomoko, bewildered. Tomoko nudged Cho gently.
Now hurry up and get dressed.
She bounded out of the room and into the living room to wait. Cho sighed and went to get dressed. Then she grabbed her purse and met Tomoko in the living room. I'm ready, said Cho. Tomoko smiled and walked out of the house with her. Tomoko led Cho into the city and to a furniture shop. As Cho looked around at all the different shops, she saw red X's on each entrance. When they got to the furniture shop, there was also an X. They went inside. Tomoko helped Cho pick out pieces of furniture that would look good in her home, and even helped to pay for a truck to ship the furniture to Cho's home. When they finished, they left the shop and Tomoko took Cho to a small restaurant for lunch.
Order anything, Cho. I'll pay for it,
said Tomoko. Cho blinked. No, you really don't have to, she protested. Tomoko laughed.
Nonsense! You just spent a fortune on furniture. Let me buy lunch.
Cho furrowed her brow and looked down at her menu. Just then a loud siren sounded from outside the restaurant. Cho looked up urgently. She looked at Tomoko, and her eyes were wide. The restaurant was completely frozen. Then everybody jumped up, screaming and running to hide under tables. Tomoko grabbed Cho and pulled her under their table.
What's going on?
Cho asked Tomoko.
Shh! Don't say anything,
she whispered. Cho went silent and sat there. The whole restaurant went silent, save for the whimpers of small children. Cho couldn't see the window from where she was, but she could hear what was going on outside. Apparently there were people who didn't get inside a building with a red X when the siren went off. Cho heard a mixture of screams and explosions outside, and saw different colored flashes on the floor beneath the windows. Cho trembled, frightened at not only the sounds, but at the fact that she had no idea what was happening. She slowly crawled halfway out from under the table to chance a look at the window. Tomoko gasped and pulled her back, just as Cho caught a glimpse of the window. She thought she saw some kind of large goat-like monster peering inside, but she convinced herself that she had imagined it. Cho sat there next to Tomoko in a small ball for at least a half an hour. Finally the noise outside ceased, as did the flashing lights.
Is it over?
Said a man from under a table in the corner. People began crawling out and standing, looking out the window. Cho and Tomoko emerged as well. Cho walked over to the window, gasping softly, eyes wide. All over the streets were dead bodies of people who hadn't hid in time. There were smoking craters in the pavement, and ashes that were the only remains of fruit in newspaper stands. Cho looked at Tomoko.
What happened? What was that?
She asked, voice cracking. Tomoko sighed.
That was why you don't go outside when the siren sounds,
muttered Tomoko. Cho furrowed her brow.
I don't understand, she said.
Tomoko hung her head. She led Cho out of the restaurant and back to her house. Cho tried not to look at the many bodies lying dead on the ground. They got back to Cho's house and went inside. Cho saw that her furniture had been delivered. She hoped that the people who brought it didn't get hurt.
Tomoko, please tell me what caused all this, Cho said, turning to Tomoko.
Well,
Tomoko began.
For 2 years now, we've been continuously attacked.
Cho blinked.
By who?
She asked.
By demons,
Tomoko replied. Cho gasped.
Demons?
Tomoko nodded.
An entire army of demons. I can't estimate how many. 2 years ago, a boy went missing. The police found traces of his blood in an alley. A few days after that, they found the boy's parents dead in their beds, having been torn completely apart. No one knew what happened to the boy, or how his parents got killed. The police thought that someone had killed him and his family. We were proved wrong, however. A few weeks later, that boy showed up in the streets, but he was different. His hair was violet and his eyes looked like yellow cat eyes. He brought with him a whole army of demons, which he sent out to kill the people in the city. Those few months were hell. So many people died, not many lived at all. It took us half a year to find something that could keep them from hurting us. An exorcist researched things that could chase demons away and found a liquid substance found in the center of an unknown fruit. The exorcist had to travel far to find a cave beneath a volcano to find this fruit. He read the juice inside the fruit shaped into an X would generate a certain odor that only those with demonic power can smell, and it's fatal if they get too close. As soon as that was discovered, he brought the fruit to Japan and painted an X with it on every door to every building or house. Some people don't make it inside a building in time when the siren is heard, and we have a huge mess to clean up when the demons are done attacking. That's what it's been like here in Tokyo. I heard they only attack the major cities.
Cho listened as Tomoko finished her story. She was baffled.
So, that boy is in charge of the demons?
Tomoko nodded.
But why would a human join forces with an army of demons?
No one knows,
said Tomoko.
Everyone who knew him at school and in his neighborhood is dead. They were the first to go.
Cho stared at her floor.
That's terrible. If I knew this had been happening, I wouldn't have moved here.
Tomoko smiled weakly.
Well, you'll be fine as long as you stay inside. Otherwise, Tokyo can be quite fun. Don't worry, you'll be safe, I promise.
Cho nodded.
Thanks, Tomoko,
said Cho softly. Tomoko nodded.
I'm going to go home now. I'll see you tomorrow, okay?
Cho nodded. She waved goodbye to Tomoko and closed her door behind her. Cho went to her room and sat on her bed, looking at the new dresser and table that had been placed against the wall. Cho was exhausted. It felt like it should already be time to go to bed, but it was only 4 o'clock in the afternoon. She lay on her bed, staring at her ceiling. After a while, she grabbed her little rag doll and held it to her chest. Beneath the doll lay the charm attached to the necklace chain around her neck. The charm was a diamond-encrusted black cross. It was yet another gift from her mother that she had since she was young. She had only once taken the necklace off since she received it. Cho closed her eyes, trying not to think about her childhood. She wanted more than anything to forget about her youth and start over here in Tokyo. She wanted to avoid everything that could possibly hurt her. But now she felt like she had just run into more trouble by moving here, what with the frequent demon attacks on the city. Cho felt herself fall involuntarily into a deep sleep. Cho sat in the middle of her living room. It was all dark, she could barely see. She trembled as she watched her front door, hugging her little rag doll to her chest. The door burst open, and a bright red light washed over her. Cho shielded her eyes, looking at the open door. There was a silhouette of a man standing in the doorway. 2 bright yellow eyes glowed from the shadow of his face, and Cho could hear him chuckling. She screamed as her doll flew from her hands and was shredded to pieces in midair. Her cross necklace was ripped from her neck, and it also exploded into pieces right before her eyes. Cho burst into tears, staring at the remnants of the most important possession she's ever owned. She looked up to the shadow of the man now walking towards her. She screamed again as he reached his hand to her. Cho woke with a start, sitting up quickly. She looked around. It was night, and the only light in the room was the moonlight shining through her window. She looked in her hand at the doll, all in one piece. She felt her necklace, then sighed in relief. It had only been a nightmare. She rolled onto her side and fell back asleep, drifting into a dreamless sleep this time.